Thank you, Tim. If I start to lose my voice, you get a shorter sermon, so there you go. Yeah. It's good to be this morning. As Tim said, we're starting a new series leading up to Easter, and the theme today is looking towards the cross. But the title for today is coming up soon. Or not? No? It'll come up at some point. The Lord provides. The Lord will provide is the title. I wonder, just a little bit of audience participation, is if you can remember occasion in your life when you were asked to do something and you thought, I don't know whether I'm brave enough or I feel confident enough to do that. Can anybody think? Yeah, you've got some over there. That's good. Just while you're thinking, I'll tell you one of mine. When I was first started work, I got a job at British Oxygen Company. That's where I met Colin. Colin was much younger then, but then so was I. And I was only 18, and I worked in the office there. And I got this message from the boss that I had to go down to Greenwell's shipyard, dry dock yard. Some of you may know it. It's at South Shields, just where that funny concrete bridge is. But now it's a housing estate, and the dock's been flooded to make a sort of beautiful pond or whatever it's meant to be in front of the houses. So I went down there, and I had to see this guy. I think he might have been called John Smith or something like that. And I got there, and I said I had to go and talk to him about some welding problem and how it was. It was a bit bizarre because I had only started the job. I didn't really know much about welding then at 18-year-old. But anyway, I went and I asked for him, and they said, oh, if you want to see him, he's down there. I said, whereabouts? He said, down there, underneath the ship. So it meant I had to climb down this set of ladders. Colin will remember because he'll have done this dozens of times. Down the side of the dry dock, then underneath the ship. And what got me was all this ship, this big steel ship, was supported by wooden pillars all the way down. And I was reminded of that the other week. Did you see on the news where in Edinburgh a big ship was in dry dock and the wind had blown it over? And I thought, oh, I wouldn't like to have been underneath that one. But sometimes when we're 18, we do foolish things, and I'm sure it got over one little fear that I had. Right, anybody else had anything that they've been asked to do? I'm going to leave you to last, Tim, because I know you'll always. Anybody else would like to volunteer something that they've done that they didn't think they were capable of? Derek, I'll bring a microphone for you. Is this one on? Yeah.
What reminded me, Colin, was the dry dock, because I was at the same place.
All right.
But I was delivering washing machines. And when I got there, I don't know, the what did they call it? It wasn't a ladder. What did they call it? The gangway thing. It was like that. And I thought, I've got to carry these washers up there, like, you know. And then this great big derrick. Well, I'm a derrick, you know, but I couldn't carry. And this great big derrick came along, this crane, and just stopped beside me. And he dropped this net down, and he says, put the washers. Because he was right away up in his cabin, he says, put the washer in the net. So I put the washers in the net. And he says, now you get in.
Yeah.
And that's when I was frightened. I thought, dear. Anyway, I got in, sat on top of the washers, and he just quietly, gently lifted me up.
Yeah.
Swung me over, gave me a little shake. And then quietly and gently dropped me on the deck. And you know, isn't that wonderful? Just like the way God has lifted us. Yeah. The Lord will provide. Praise God.
Thank you, Derek, for that. Anybody else got a story? Or we're going to have to rely on... Did you put your hand up, Audrey? Yeah. You did. I'm good. I'm sparing Tim for the moment.
Like
No.
No, I was asked to sing for my friend's wedding. And I was absolutely petrified. I was petrified so much on the day that I couldn't stop throwing up in the bathroom before I went. But we managed.
It
worked.
And so it turned out. Well done. Thank you. We'll just stop there, because otherwise we could go around everybody, couldn't we? So we all get asked to do things, and sometimes we decline, and sometimes we do them and we learn and grow from the doing. We're going to look at a story today where somebody was asked to do something that I don't think anybody here has ever been asked to do. I'd be very surprised if somebody here has been asked to do this. And we find that Tim actually pinched a bit of my sermon a few weeks ago because he introduced Abraham and Isaac. So we're going to look at Genesis chapter 22, and we're going to look at verses 1 to 19. Okay. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and saddled his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he'd cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood from the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here." Isaac said, "But where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told them about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you've not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it on a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. That's a great story, isn't it? And it's quite a chilling story in some respects. Was I right? Has anybody ever here been asked to sacrifice your child? Sometimes you might have felt like it when they were a bit misbehaving. But have anybody here? No? Looking around? No? Maybe you won't admit to it if you had. But can you imagine being asked to do that? To take your son, your child, up onto a mountain, to prepare a fire, to prepare the wood, to set fire to it, and to offer as a sacrifice your child, regardless of whether it's the oldest one or the youngest one. What must have been going through Abraham's mind when God told him to do that? And yet we see from that story that he was obedient. He set off straight away the next day. He didn't procrastinate. He didn't chew it over for weeks on end and think, well, God's spoken to me. I'll just hang on and see if he speaks to me again and reminds me, like we sometimes do, don't we? God tells us to do something, and we think, well, maybe it wasn't God. I'll wait a little while and see if he tells me again. He didn't. He set off the next day, 2 servants and Isaac. And then when they get there, isn't it wonderful how he says to the servants, wait at the bottom of the mountain. And he said to them, we are going to worship, but we're going to come back. That sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? Because he'd been asked to sacrifice Isaac. So if he'd carried that out, it wouldn't have been we coming back. It would have been him coming back on his own. And we wonder why he's done that. Maybe he did that to appease the servants so that they wouldn't panic and think, what would the servants think of me if I'm going to tell them I'm going to kill my own son? Or maybe he said that because Isaac was there and he didn't want to frighten him. Because Isaac was old enough perhaps to rebel against him and run away. Perhaps any son would run away if you told them that you were going to sacrifice them in that way. But anyway, he went up the mountain, and on the way up, Isaac asks those words, what's going to happen? Where's the offering? And Abraham says to him, the Lord will provide. All the time, Abraham was being obedient, right up to that point where he held the knife to Isaac. We do need to understand a little bit about the culture. And the culture in those days was, if God was fortunate to give you, or fortunate to get a son, that your firstborn son was actually God's. And God could make a call on that son for whatever you called him to be. And we see evidence of that in other places of children who are taken, once they get old enough, are taken to the temple to serve in the temple or to do various things. But we don't really see evidence of child sacrifice in the Old Testament in that way, not amongst the Jews. So we get to that point, and Abraham is about to stab Isaac, and God speaks to him again. Abraham, Abraham, and Abraham looks. And there, just by chance you might say, was a ram in the thicket, trapped by its horns. Now, how did that happen? Was it just by chance, or do you think perhaps God had planned it that way? The same way as we heard at Palm Sunday, where the disciples would go to a certain place, and a man will have a donkey or an ass ready for you. Now, was that just by chance? Was the man just there ready, waiting? Had God instructed him? Had somebody gone and paid him in advance for it? Who knows? But God had provided what was needed. And in this case, God provided what Abraham needed. He needed a ram so that he didn't have to sacrifice Isaac. And then the confusion that must have gone through Abraham's mind, well, how can I sacrifice Isaac, my only true son, when God's given us this promise? And the promise was that a great nation would come out of him. Well, how was that going to happen if Isaac had been sacrificed? It wasn't going to happen, was it? Unless God then had plans to give Abraham more children at a later age. By this time, goodness knows what age he would have been to work out. But God had a plan and provided. And I think for you and I, the message from this is 2 words that God will provide, but the 2 words are trust and obey. Abraham evidently trusted God. He had such a relationship with God that he just relied on God. And God said to do something, so he implicitly did what God asked him to do. He obeyed him in everything. I just want to do a little experiment here. Tim, I need you to come to the front. And we've got a chair, and it's quite a sturdy chair, I think. I'd like you to stand on that chair, Tim.
Okay.
Stand and face that way.
Do we have public liability insurance?
No, we don't.
Okay,
not,
cool.
not in this church, we don't. Not even sure we have it. Our insurance specialist isn't here today. So
Okay, cool.
So I'd just like you to cross your arm. And in a while, I'm going to ask you to fall backwards. Okay. But to
I want
help
to say
you,
I wasn't told this was going to happen.
to help you, I'm going to select somebody. Who would you like to select from the congregation to catch you? I'm not going to accept it, but you select who you want.
Yeah, I was thinking I'm going to pick those four over there. Okay.
I wasn't thinking of 4 people. I was just thinking of one person.
We want one person to catch
person.
me. Okay, Eli then.
Eli. All right.
You want to?
It's all right, Eli. No, stay there, Eli. I've got a better idea. Colin, would you like to come and catch him? I did have Hazel in mind, but Hazel's not here today. Now, Colin, look at Colin. I've known Colin a lot of years. It's hard to believe that he used to go to the gym and he was 6'6" at one time. 6'7", sorry. Right. So, shows your muscles, Colin. There you go. Look, your muscles.
Tense a bit more, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So, Tim, if I said to you now, I just want you to fall back. Colin's going to catch you. How do you feel about that?
I don't feel. I'm really sorry, Colin. I don't feel. I don't think it will be good for either of our health, really, if I were to fall on you.
I'm worried about me.
Yeah. I think I would be fine. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure you would be fine.
All right. So you're a bit reluctant to do it.
Yes.
But you see, Tim, I'm a senior leader in this church, and you're just a junior leader, right? Okay. Is that right, folks? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm commanding you as a senior leader to fall backwards. How do you feel about that?
Like we need to discuss our job descriptions.
In other words, you don't really trust
I don't want
me.
to.
You don't
No,
want to
no,
trust me.
sorry. Yeah.
You see, to have trust and obey, you've got to have confidence in the person who's telling you to do something, haven't you? And Tim hasn't got much confidence in.
In many ways, I do. I have confidence about many things in you, Colin, but not this particular.
And so you have to have faith. And what I want to say to you, see, Abraham had built up such a relationship with God that he had complete confidence in him. And that's what he says to us today. Timmy, you can jump down now, just because you get with it. Thank you, Colin. You didn't have to use your super strength today. And just really what I want to say today is that if we have such a relationship with God, that it really doesn't matter what he asks us to do. No matter how inferior we feel, no matter how inadequate we feel, no matter how young we feel, no matter how old we feel, if we've got that relationship with God and he asks us to do something, we're called to trust and obey what he says. Because not only will God trust, when we trust him, he will be the provider. He'll provide what we need. He'll equip us to do what we need. And we've got to learn that, and we all just learn it as we get older and older. We learn to trust and obey. And I was reminded with the worship band, I'm just having a short sermon today, but it's good. Would the band like to come up? The words of an old hymn that we used to sing many, many times in the chapel was trust and obey. How many know trust and obey? Yeah, there you go. Poor Fuller, just being young and beautiful, didn't know it. So she's had to learn it specially for today. But these are the words. I'll just remind you of the words. They fit in so well with today. When you walk with the Lord in the light of his word, what a glory he sheds on our way. While we do his good will, he abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Not a burden we bear, not a sorrow we share, but our toil he does richly repay. Not a grief or a loss, not a frown or a cross, but is blessed if we trust and obey. But we never can prove the delights of his love until all on the altar we lay. That's really so fitting, isn't it? Till we lay our sacrifice on the altar for the favor he shows, for the joy he bestows, or for them who will trust and obey. Then in fellowship sweet, we will sit at his feet, or will walk by his side on the way. What he says, we will do. Where he sends, we will go. Never fear, only trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. So this coming week, let's be people who trust and obey. We're coming up to the time of the cross. God provided a sacrifice, his only Son, for each one of us, and calls us to trust and obey and what he's done for each one of us and how much he loves us all. We're going to sing that. Do we want to sing it? Yeah, we're going to sing that. Trust and obey. Thank you.